we entitled this Dojo of Divinity, Divine Union, because we really view this divine union relationship as a dojo, as a training ground, as a really sacred space where we remember ourselves, where we come home to ourselves, where we really remember who we are as divine beings. And the divine union is this amazing vehicle to really bring us to this beautiful sacred space within us. And we're going to start. We'll just go over what we're going to talk about tonight. And so Sean is going to start us off with covering the metaphysical, energetic aspects of twin flames. And he came up with this beautiful phrase of the sacred mirror. And then we're going to talk about some really common, typical divine union initiations that you might be going through or might come up in the future, or maybe you've already had them. And then some real foundational divine union principles, and then some practices that Sean and I have really developed to help us through the process that have been really helpful to us. We want to share those. And then talking about, in general, how to navigate through particularly communication. We'd like to call them opportunities. I wrote here challenges, but we really like to refer to them as opportunities. And then covering sovereignty in partnership. So obviously we're coming as individual sovereign beings. And what does that look like? What does a sovereign partnership look like? And then really this underlying theme of we in a divine union, it's our invitation to really move through everything together, everything as a unit rather than as individuals. And just a little bit of tips or information if you feel you're not yet in a union, but ways that you might prepare for a union. Okay. Yeah. So we'll start off with Sean's explanation of the sacred mirror.
Yeah. So it's really fun. If we go and look all over YouTube, basically we're going to see a whole bunch of different ideas about what a divine union is or what a twin flame thing is. And a lot of the teachers are, they're communicating some teachings that are a little bit unhealthy, I think. We've determined through our processes and some of our experiences that basically some of the ways that people have framed the union is troubling, is going to end up in painful spots later. So at first it can feel, let me just talk about, I guess, the energetics of it just a little bit, because this stuff can be a little bit boring. Some people really like it, but I really like it. But I'll talk about it just a little bit to kind of get an idea of what's going on with the divine union. Like what do you see when you look at them? And generally the attraction is really deep because what you see is sort of the perfect polarity reflection of the divinity in you harmonized with another in the future, right? So you're sort of seeing that the potential for this partner with you, but you're seeing it from the divinity's perspective, which is looking past the human. And so this is why we can sort of end up, they'll often do things that we really, really didn't like in our other partners. They'll do very similar activities that we really didn't like, but basically because of this, we see this potential so clearly, and this attraction is so strong that we have no other real choice but to just go along with it and try to harmonize, right? Try to figure out what's going on. And so what ends up happening is we're looking into what I've been calling the sacred mirror, what we've been calling the sacred mirror. I'm not sure if other people use this term at all. Probably it's somewhere, but basically what this is sort of the relationship will mirror the inner disharmony and the inner harmony. So basically the more each individual is in harmony with themselves, the more harmonious the collective relationship unit becomes too. And so it becomes clear at a certain stage that the way to harmonize is to basically heal ourselves and take our focus off of trying to help the other or trying to guide the other so much. Basically, we approach everything as essentially two focal points of consciousness observing the same collective encounter, circumstance, whatever we call that. So we have something occurs. We almost step out of it like scientists, and we sort of say, what are these two forms, which don't represent our truest unlimited potential as humans? These two forms are engaged in a story together. And what are we noticing about this conflict? And, almost as if we're reading a fairy tale and we're trying to think about sort of the moral stances of the different characters. And, well, I like this person's stance because it's whatever, but we're trying to do that in an objective way. And we can do that, but we have to step out of some of the discomfort. When we look into the sacred mirror, we see ourselves, and sometimes we see the parts of ourselves that are the most difficult to see. And the reason for that pull to do that, the reason for the attraction, is because the heart or the soul, the higher self, is always attempting to pull in the fragmentation that's happened earlier in either earlier lifetimes or earlier in that life, in the current life, of trauma. Basically, how do I find my wholeness again? And then what happens is the rational mind says, oh, the partner, that person will make me whole. That person does it. And that's not how it works, but we trick ourselves into that a little bit. And we start to think that when we are together in harmony with another person, that's what we want. And therefore, because we desire that, we'll be happy afterwards and everything will be sort of perfect, happily ever after type thing. But the first stage is just recognizing that that's not going to happen that way. There's a grievance that happens there too. It can be a slow process. It can be a longer one. We may have to see some stuff and realize basically that without them, we have to be okay, because otherwise we're going to have a lot of pulls, especially as we get more and more sensitive. If they're sad or whatever, and they withdraw a bit, we're going to go through torture and torment in ourselves because we're not comfortable without their presence, right? And so to foster and facilitate inner peace, we have to be able to sit with our own divinity and be comfortable with ourselves, and our partner will help guide us to that by being the sacred mirror, which helps us see that. And essentially that's how we approach it, is the partner is not really doing anything. The partner is simply mirroring to you aspects of yourself that maybe you haven't totally seen yet, or you've seen in the past, but didn't really work on. We can see, at least for me, when I first started to notice that I lied to myself in different ways, this was probably around 2011, 2012. I had this realization, I actually lie to myself. Forget other people lying to me. I lie to myself a lot about things to try and convince myself to do things that are more comfortable. And we do that with relationship as well. And our partner does that and mirrors it for us. We can't really ignore these areas, and we see it. So on the energetic side, we could look at it like, let's say that your partner has a distortion somewhere in the red or orange energy centers, the root or the sacral chakra areas. It could have to do with sort of power dynamics in a relationship, or it could be up into the yellow solar plexus chakra or the energy center. They're having a sort of dynamic of power in relationships. There's usually a power struggle when two divine beings embracing their sovereignty step together to try and partner, because they both have different kind of ideas, right? They have different ideas of what's right, what's not right, what's kind, what's not kind, what's gentle and loving and what's not, right? Different ways of expressing compassion. Just as a really quick example, divine masculine expresses compassion typically through wisdom, because you'll notice this if you ask a lot of men. And when I say divine masculine, I'm not talking about men or women with divine feminine. We have both aspects within us. But when you ask somebody that's in their sort of divine masculine presence for some help with something, you're generally going to get advice back, right? You're going to get what they consider to be wise advice. And if you have the wise advice, then obviously there's no problem because you know what to do. So they're in their own way, they're trying to help you out of whatever you're in. But the divine feminine, usually when receiving that, they're kind of like, I just want you to understand me. I'm not really wanting you to tell me what to do. And that's where that like mansplaining type, I think, concept came from, where, you know, we ask a question or we bring a problem to a guy or a masculine type energy, and then they mansplain to us, right? They try to teach when we're not asking to be taught. We're asking to just share in our moment, right? And so the same thing happens on the male side. Men will go into their divine feminine and want to share as long as they've started to open up. And so we want to understand that both partners are going to have sort of a different approach that they kind of default to. And part of what they're learning is what approaches to use with their partner that are harmonious, because both of you have preferences. And so Tassel has I would say a bias, and hopefully she agrees with this. I would say she has a bias to some gentleness, right? Gentleness, kindness. She wants peace, kindness, and love, right? And I have a bias to more colder wisdom, truth. I would say it can be colder. And so in our interactions, when one of us is upset, she'll want me to love and accept, and I'll kind of want to pierce some of the fear or some of the issues that are coming up with some wisdom to try and shine some light and illuminate what's going on so we can move through it. And so what ends up happening is we're both looking to balance the divine feminine, divine masculine energies within us so that we can bring both approaches in the way that we feel is good for our partner. And through this, actually, we learn how to mirror whatever we need to anyone. It's through this partnership that we go, okay, this is how I show up. You get a sense of what they want. You get a sense of what is best for this person that you're talking to. And then if you want to mirror them, you can. It starts to become a much more conscious endeavor of mirroring, or at least being aware. You start to learn how to mirror, how to choose which aspect of the energy you're mirroring, right? Because in all energy, there's love. And so you can always, and you think about people finding the silver lining in things, and that's the same kind of concept. Energy itself is neutral. And so you're either always looking at a positive aspect of energy, or you're looking at kind of a negative aspect, or you're noticing its neutrality. And so you're more just choosing how to engage this, and you're trying to call them the sacred mirror, understanding to impersonalize it a little bit, not depersonalize it. You don't want to step away from them. You want to connect, but you don't want to be too attached to how they are experiencing, because when they are in fear, if you are resisting their expression, you're essentially contributing to the fear in yourself, and are sort of basically saying, yes, this is not great. This is not good. I'm basically judging their fear, which is fearful of their fear. And I think I said on stream the other day, like one of the presidents said, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. And that's basically true. And you're looking to transcend fear itself. So once you're not fearing fear, then you're in a really, really good spot. And that's sort of the entire process of the sacred mirror, is to help us see parts of ourselves, accept parts of ourselves, so that when we move forward, we're not having all the fear come up. And then it becomes just really fairly quick, I think, healing conversations that happen where there's a bash of some kind or a conflict of some kind. And then within a little bit of time, both have, instead of blaming the other, they're immediately introspective. Or coming back to introspection as quickly as possible to say, how am I contributing to creating this moment? Not so much, why did they respond how they did, or whatever, because we often forget that the other's responding and mirroring us. And probably the way they're mirroring us can also be a remnant of conversation that happened yesterday or the day before too, right? So there's some stuff that maybe they didn't express that's been built up a little as well. So we want to like just appreciate and respect that each of us are sovereign divine beings having this unique experience of what's going on. Knowing that we're mirroring each other, knowing that kind of no matter what they do, it is part of our sort of, we've called it to us and co-created it in some way, even if it's not apparent to us how that could be. We have called it in, or it wouldn't arrive. We've had an attraction point in our field that's brought it to us. So it's basically like, that's when you start to know that you're kind of really in that type of partnership, when both just, they're more interested in how they can do better without judging themselves, basically, like how we can show up in a little different way that might be more harmonious than they are in what the partner is doing to show up more harmoniously. And that just gives both a lot of space for inner development and growth, and just accepting each other, because they accept themselves as well. We can't really accept the other unless we accept ourselves. And that's sort of the point, is they do things that we have trouble accepting, so that we can go, oh, okay, I get it. And start to accept that this aspect is within me too. I have the capacity to do what that person's doing, what my partner's doing with drawing. I can do that. I've done it. When I've been scared or hurt or whatever it is, and they're showing me the opposite side of that behavior, of what it's like when I've done that to others and stuff like that too. That serves a huge purpose, because in order for us to find peace in ourselves, we literally just have to know ourselves. So we see ourselves and then accept ourselves, and then become divinity expressing here, which we already are, but have more or less forgotten and are in the process of remembering